While watching several matches from my video collection, I saw how some of the referees each had different cadences to their counts, whether it be the normal 3 count or the 10 count outside the ring, especially the early NWA refs for Crockett. Was there ever a referee that Mr. Cornette disliked having work their matches due to the referee count? Did Jim ever have to tell a referee to slow down his count during a match because it was destroying the flow of the match by going too fast?
No, actually, truthfully, in the old days, and I won't mention any names because I liked many of these people, and some of them I never met because it was just a thing in the old days of the 70s, at least, the Tennessee referees. Some of them had a thing where they would count notoriously slowly if the heel was on top of the babyface during the heat because they didn't want to get heat with the people. But they would count fast when the babyface was on top of the heel because they wanted to get over with the people. And sometimes it was the point where it threw, especially if somebody just came in the territory and they hadn't figured out which of the referees was the real babyface ones yet. It would throw them off because sometimes it almost and plus it was an old Tennessee trick. And if you go back and you watch the match where Lawler beats Hennig for the AWA championship, Jackie Fargo was the referee, and it was an old trick in the old days there that if the local hometown hero was wrestling the out-of-town heel or maybe the champion or whatever, to make it look better for the hometown guy that when he wasn't going to win. And I only have to think this is what this was. When the referee would go down, he'd go down with his right hand on the mat like a 1 and then start a 1. So then 2, and the 2 was really 3. So when the champion kicked out on 2, it could look like, oh, my guy had him beat, right? So the people actually pop on the 2 count in that AWA title match. And then he counts again the 3 because they're already popping. So Lawler actually pinned Hennig for a 4 count. If you go now, when you know that now, go back and watch that match. But like most of the, and then some of the referees, just because they were green or whatever, it might, they sometimes get lost in the moment or don't know what they're doing or daydream or whatever the fuck, and the count slows up and speeds up or whatever. But guys like Tommy Young, Ronnie West, Nick Patrick. I should say Nick Patrick on the slower fast count. But when left to their own devices, Brian Hildebrand, the really good referees and the Hebners, they knew kind of how to work with the individual match and what kind of cadence or count or whatever to have. So and another thing that was really miserable was in the early Crockett expansion when we'd go up to like New York State and be in Syracuse or Rochester where they still had a strong local commission with a bunch of goofy rules, because there'd be Tommy Young on the tour with us sitting there at the table playing the cassette player for the ring announcer for the entrance music, because they'd have a 70-year-old commission referee that'd been refereeing since Elio DiPaolo cooked his first batch of fucking sauce. It was in the ring and was fucking up our match because he was so old he couldn't get out of the way and couldn't get up and down. And I got one of the fucking New York commissioners hot because they would still sit at the table back in the mid 80s. Still, it still looked like it did in the 60s, right? There's a couple of inspectors and this and that. And I leaned over Tommy Young's shoulder and I told the inspector, I said, the best referee in the business is sitting here playing a boombox and we've got a corpse in the ring refereeing our match. Is this guy so security cut off or what?
Did you ever have any referees that you regularly had to work with that you just didn't like as a referee for your matches?
Only that when George Scott was in WCW at little time and his little weasel stooge son Byron became a referee so that he could get in the locker room and stooge on everybody. And even Bobby Eaton didn't trust that fucking guy. He didn't like him, didn't trust him. He'd look sideways at him. He'd say, he just looks shady. He looks weaselly. So otherwise than that, I mean, it wasn't maybe some were better than others, but I can't remember anybody we had a tremendous dislike for. Just like, oh no, not this motherfucker again.
What'd you think of the referees in Dallas?
Well, see, once again, Bronco Lubitsch as a referee was horrible, horrendous. Because at that point on the spot shows, he literally would stand in the corner of the ring when you did it, when you made a cover, and count with his foot like Mr. Ed, 1, 2, because but he was so old then. I mean, he couldn't get up and down at that pace, but he was still figured in. He had been a top wrestler at his day. He'd been a top manager down there and drawing a ton of money for him. He'd bought into the office and been partners and worked with Fritz since probably before Fritz was the owner of the whole thing. He was figured in. He refereed. He did a variety of things. But like, if they usually after a while started giving David Manning or Rick Hazard or the young kid, I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, but our matches, because we didn't want to fucking give Bronco a stroke, because that's the thing. We loved him as a person. He was such a nice guy and so much fun, a wise old man, great to be around in the locker room. We didn't want him to have a fucking stroke, but he just couldn't get up and down anymore.